What happens when New York's most skeptical critic meets the man who sees into her soul? Elara was the best journalist of all and was hired to judge, to analyze, and to be impartial. Professional. But he wasn't interested in being judged. He was interested in seducing her. Marco Thorne, the ski magnate, the owner of this luxury empire, a tycoon with a charm as great as his fortune. He saw through her defenses, provoking her with an audacity that both irritated and ignited her from within. The icy wind of Silver Peak was biting, but the sharpest blade Elara Vance would face wouldn't come from the frigid air, but from a man she swore to despise. The luxury taxi, a black vehicle with tinted windows, seemed like a cocoon of sophistication in the untouched snow landscape, a temporary refuge from the storm that was brewing. Elara stepped out, the pure, sharp air, with its scent of pine and the promise of a frigid adventure, a welcome contrast to the stale air of the New York offices she had left behind. She adjusted the cashmere scarf around her neck, her blue-gray eyes sweeping the imposing facade of the Grand Summit Lodge. The architecture was a harmonious blend of rustic and modern, with dark wood, rough stone, and enormous windows reflecting the intense blue sky. It was exactly as she had expected, and exactly as she had feared. At that moment, the phone in her bag vibrated with irritating insistence. Elara pulled it out, the screen lighting up with Julian's name and a series of missed calls. A heavy sigh escaped her lips, a shadow of annoyance and a pang of pain crossing her perfect face. She ignored the call, but the vibration seemed to echo in her soul, an unwanted reminder of a past she desperately tried to leave behind. Julian. The name was an echo of broken promises, of a future that had shattered into 1,000 pieces, leaving her with a wound that hadn't yet fully healed. She didn't have time for him now. She couldn't afford to be distracted. Elara was a renowned luxury travel journalist, a feared and respected critic in the world of high-end hospitality. Her pen was sharp, her perception relentless, but her latest review about a resort in Tuscany had generated a controversy that tarnished her reputation, accusing her of being too skeptical and unable to appreciate the true soul of a place. The headlines still echoed in her mind like a chorus of merciless judges. The cold critic who doesn't see the beauty, Elara Vance, the ice queen of hospitality. Each word was a whip, each accusation a scar. This trip to Silver Peak wasn't just a mission, it was penance, a chance to cleanse her honor, to prove that her integrity was unwavering, even if her heart was broken. She needed to be impeccable. She needed to prove to herself and to the world that she was still the best. She pulled her wheeled suitcase, an elegant Rimowa model, and headed for the main entrance. The doorman, a tall, smiling man in an impeccable uniform, opened the double solid wood doors. The cozy warmth of the lobby enveloped her, carrying with it the aroma of wood burning in the fireplace and a subtle hint of vanilla and spices. The atmosphere was grand, yet welcoming, with high ceilings, wrought iron chandeliers, and indigenous artwork on the walls. Guests in designer ski attire mingled, some with champagne glasses in hand, others with excited children. Elara approached the reception desk, where a young woman with a professional smile awaited her. The receptionist looks up from her computer, a glint of recognition in her eyes. "Good afternoon, Miss Vance. Welcome to the Grand Summit Lodge. Your suite is ready." Elara felt a chill in her stomach, the smile freezing on her lips. She had booked under a false name, Eleanor Smith, to keep her mission a secret. Elara corrects, her voice calm but firm. "There's been some mistake. My reservation is in the name of Eleanor Smith." The receptionist, oblivious to the tension, consults the computer. "Ah, yes, excuse me, Miss Smith. The manager informed us about the name change. It seems Mr. Thorne wanted his arrival to be impeccable." The name Thorne hits Elara like an icy yet burning snowflake. Marco Thorne, the ski magnate, the owner of this luxury empire. The man she had briefly encountered at a press event a few years ago, where he had scorned her with a condescending comment about journalists looking for flaws instead of beauty, a cold, superior smile on his lips that made her feel small and insignificant, a feeling she swore she would never feel again. And now he knew she was here, and worse, he knew she was. Rage and humiliation seethed in her chest. He was playing games with her. Elara felt a shiver run down her spine, but maintained her composure. "Is Mr. Thorne aware of my visit?" The receptionist, oblivious to the tension, replies, "Yes, Miss Smith. He asked to be informed as soon as you arrived. He's at the lobby bar, if you'd like to greet him." Elara didn't want to greet him. She wished he were anywhere else on the planet. But her mission was clear: to evaluate the hotel impartially. And that included the owner, if he insisted on interfering. Elara forces a smile. "That won't be necessary. Just the suite card, please." As the receptionist prepared the card, Elara felt a gaze on her. She turned discreetly and saw him, Marco Thorne. He was sitting on one of the leather sofas in front of the fireplace, a glass of whiskey in his hand, conversing with a group of businessmen. He was even more imposing than she remembered, tall, with broad shoulders that perfectly filled out his grey wool blazer. His dark hair was slightly tousled, giving him an air of relaxed charm that Elara knew was carefully calculated. His piercing blue eyes met hers. A slow, dangerous smile spread across his lips, like a predator spotting its prey. He thinks, Elara Vance, the dreaded critic. The Ice Queen. Did she really think she could hide from me? How naive. I knew she was coming. The controversy in Tuscany was a gift. She's wounded, vulnerable, and desperate to prove her worth. And me? I love a challenge, especially one as beautiful and stubborn as her. She's a fascinating chess piece on my board, and I'm going to have a lot of fun playing. He raised his glass in a silent toast, a gesture that exuded confidence and control. Elara felt an uncomfortable heat rise up her neck, her heart pounding erratically against her ribs, a dangerous spark igniting in her chest. That smile. It was the same smile he had given her years ago, a smile that said, "I know something you don't, and I'm in control, and now you're in my territory." She took the suite card from the receptionist, thanked her, and headed for the elevators, ignoring Marco with as much dignity as she could muster. On the way, her high heel slipped slightly on the plush carpet, making her stumble for a moment. She quickly recovered, glancing furiously over her shoulder, only to see Marco feign an amused smile behind his whiskey glass. The idiot! That man would be the ruin of her mission, or worse, the ruin of her sanity. The suite was, as expected, spectacular. A spacious area with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the snow-capped mountains. The decor was elegant and modern, with touches of local art and a gently crackling gas fireplace. There was a chilled bottle of champagne and a basket of fresh fruit on the coffee table, along with a card. Elara took the card. The handwriting was bold and confident. "Welcome to Grand Summit Lodge, Miss Vance. I hope your stay is as enlightening as mine. D.T." Elara crumpled the card angrily. Enlightening? He was mocking her. He knew she was there to criticize, and he was enjoying it. Her phone vibrated again, a text message this time. She hesitated, anger at Marco mixed with irritation at Julian. She opened the message, read it quickly, and a knot formed in her stomach. "Please, Elara, we need to talk. I miss you." She locked the screen, feeling suffocated. An arrogant tycoon and a persistent ex-fiancé. That was all she needed for her redemption mission. She tossed the card in the trash and approached the window, watching the skiers glide down the slopes. She wouldn't let Marco Thorne ruin her chance at redemption. She would be professional, impartial, and above all, ruthless. That evening, Elara prepared for dinner at the lodge's main restaurant, the Alpine Hearth. She chose a navy blue silk dress that accentuated her eyes and draped elegantly over her silhouette. She wanted to look flawless, unattainable. Upon entering the restaurant, the atmosphere was welcoming and sophisticated, with low lighting and the gentle sound of a piano. She was led to a table near the window, offering a breathtaking view of the illuminated mountains. She had barely sat down when a deep, familiar voice sounded beside her. Marco, with a slow, dangerous smile, asks, "What a pleasant coincidence. Miss Vance. Or should I say, Miss Smith?" Elara turned her head, and there he was, Marco Thorne. He looked impeccable in a dark suit that accentuated his broad shoulders. His blue eyes sparkled with a mixture of amusement and something else, something that made Elara's stomach clench. Elara, her voice cold, replied, "Mr. Thorne, I didn't know the lodge owner dined with the guests." He replies, pulling up a chair and sitting down opposite her, uninvited. "Only with the most interesting ones. And you, Miss Vance, are undeniably interesting." He thinks, "She's tense. Good. She didn't expect me to confront her so directly. The game has begun. She thinks she can ignore me, but I'll make sure she can't think of anything but me. Julian, whoever he is, he doesn't stand a chance. Her attention will be mine, exclusively." Elara feels a chill. "I'm here on business, Mr. Thorne, and your presence is a distraction." He smiles, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "Ah, but distraction can be a form of inspiration, don't you think? Perhaps I can offer you a unique perspective on the Grand Summit Lodge. A perspective only the owner can give," Elara retorted, picking up the menu. "I doubt your perspective is impartial, and impartiality is the foundation of my work." Marco, his tone now more serious, states, "And mine is excellence. And I guarantee that this lodge is the embodiment of it." Elara, with a nod, said, "I appreciate excellence, Mr. Thorne, but I don't confuse glitz with substance. And often luxury hides a lack of soul." Marco tilts his head, a thoughtful smile on his lips. "An interesting critique. And you believe the Grand Summit Lodge lacks soul?" Elara picks up her glass of water, her voice a little softer. "I'm still assessing. But your constant presence isn't helping my impartiality." He leans in, his tone seductive. "Ah, but I'm part of the experience, aren't I? The caring owner, the host who ensures every detail is perfect. Or, in your case, the owner who ensures you don't miss a thing." Suddenly, a subtle vibration emanating from Elara's bag, resting on the chair beside her, broke her concentration for a moment. Her eyes darted to the bag, a slight expression of annoyance and worry crossing her face. Marco, with his keen perception, didn't miss the detail. He tilted his head, a glint of curiosity and something more in his blue eyes. Marco, with an enigmatic smile, asks, "It seems Miss Vance has persistent admirers, or perhaps it's just a reminder not to miss her next evaluation." Elara, her voice a little colder than intended, replies, "That's none of your business, Mr. Thorne, and don't confuse persistence with importance." Marco laughs, a deep and pleasant sound. "Of course, just an observation. But I must say, distraction doesn't quite fit with his reputation for relentless focus." He thinks, Julian, the name that flashed on her screen, an ex-fiancé perhaps. She's annoyed, but also apprehensive. Interesting. He's a distraction for her, and that means he's an obstacle for me, an obstacle I'm going to remove. Her attention will be mine, completely. Elara felt a shiver. He had been watching her every move, and now he knew there was more. The waiter approached to take their order. Elara ordered grilled salmon and a glass of Sauvignon Blanc. Marco ordered a steak and a Cabernet. Marco continued after the waiter had left. "So, Miss Vance, what's your initial verdict? Is the food worthy of your sharp pen? Is the wine pretentious enough?" Elara, trying to remain calm, replies, "The food hasn't arrived yet, and the wine is excellent. But don't worry, Mr. Thorne, I'm not as predictable as you think." He laughs. "Predictable? You're the least predictable woman I've ever met." Which leads me to a question. Why is the dreaded Elara Vance here in disguise after her latest controversy? Elara felt a knot in her stomach, a sharp pang of shame and anger. He had touched a raw nerve. Elara, her voice tense, says, "That's none of your business," Marco retorted, his tone now more serious. "Everything that happens at my lodge is my business, especially when it involves criticism that could affect the reputation of my business." Elara, looking him in the eye, states, "My reputation is at stake here as well, and I won't allow you to compromise it with your charm tactics." He smiles, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "With charm tactics? You think I'm trying to seduce you, Miss Vance?" Elara felt a heat rise through her body, her blood pulsing in her veins. Her gaze drifted to his lips for a moment, and Elara felt a shiver run down her spine, a dangerous spark she desperately tried to ignore. His scent, a mixture of pine, whiskey, and something untamed, overwhelmed her senses, disorienting her. She hated herself for feeling this attraction, for her body betraying her mind. Elara, her voice a little hoarse, accuses, "I think you're trying to manipulate me, Mr. Thorne, and I'm not so easily manipulated," he says, his gaze dropping to her lips for just a second, but long enough for Elara to feel the impact. "We'll see. We'll see." Dinner continued with a constant exchange of barbs and intense glances. Elara tried to concentrate on the food, but Marco's presence was a constant distraction. He was irritating, arrogant, but also incredibly charming and intelligent. He challenged her in a way that few men had. When dinner was over, Elara stood up quickly. Elara, with a forced smile, said, "Excuse me, Mr. Thorne, I have more assessments to do." As Elara realizes her mission for redemption just took a dangerous detour and tries to process that magnetic spark with Marco Thorne through her own skepticism. I really want to know, what part of the world are you listening to this story from right now? Leave your comment below. I love reading every single one of you. And if you're enjoying this journey, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. He says, standing up as well. "Of course, I don't want to interfere with your research, but I hope you'll consider the possibility of a more in-depth interview at some point. I'm sure there are many details you haven't yet discovered about the Grand Summit Lodge and about me." Elara feels a shiver. "I don't doubt it, but I prefer to find things out for myself." She turned and left the restaurant, feeling Marco's gaze on her back. He was a challenge, a dangerous challenge, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to face it. Back in her suite, Elara threw herself onto the sofa, exhausted. She picked up her notebook and began to write, trying to organize her thoughts. The service was impeccable, the food delicious, the ambiance luxurious. But Marco Thorne's presence was an uncontrollable variable. He was a giant question mark in her assessment. Her phone vibrated again, a new message from Julian. "Please, Elara, give me a chance. I know I messed up." Elara felt a mixture of anger and exhaustion. He wouldn't give up. She locked the screen, the image of his name etched in her mind. How could she focus on her mission with so many men trying to destabilize her? She stood up and went to the window, watching the twinkling lights of the ski resort. The snow fell softly, covering everything with a white blanket. She felt torn. Part of her wanted to run away from that irritating and seductive man. Another part, a part she didn't want to admit, felt a strange attraction to him, a dangerous curiosity. She picked up her phone and dialed her best friend's number. Serafina Dubois, Elara, as soon as her friend answered, said, "Sarah, you won't believe what's happening. Marco Thorne knows I'm here, and he's torturing me. And to top it all off, Julian won't stop calling me." "Serafina, are you torturing me? Or giving you a reason to write an unforgettable review?" "And Julian, hasn't he given up yet?" Elara complains. "He's arrogant and too charming for my own good. And Julian is a plague from the past who refuses to go away." Serafina, with a playful tone, says, "Ah, Elara, it seems the skeptical critic has finally found her match, and her romantic past is knocking at the door." Elara laughed, but there was a nervousness in her voice. "That will never happen." "I despise him," Serafina says. "Disdain and passion are close neighbors, my dear, especially when there's so much tension in the air, and Julian is only adding fuel to the fire." Elara hung up the phone, feeling Serafina's words echo in her mind. Disdain and passion. She looked at the mountain view, the distant lights resembling stars in the snow. She couldn't fall in love with Marco Thorne. She couldn't. Her career, her integrity, everything depended on it. But the image of his dangerous smile and the glint in his blue eyes invaded her mind. And Julian's persistence was a constant reminder that her past still haunted her. She felt like a skier on a steep slope, losing control. And the worst part was that she wasn't sure if she wanted to break. Elara wondered, how could she maintain her impartiality when her heart and her past were in such dangerous turmoil? Elara woke the next morning to the soft light of the snow reflecting off the suite's windows, painting the room in shades of blue and white. The anger of the previous night had subsided, replaced by a cold determination and a pang of dangerous curiosity. Marco Thorne was an obstacle, yes, but she was Elara Vance, and no arrogant tycoon nor a persistent ex-fiancé would stop her from doing her job. She got up, went through her morning routine with almost military precision, and donned a stylish ensemble of black ski pants and a white quilted jacket with silver accents. If he wanted to play, she would play, and she would play to win. As she left the suite, she noticed a small cream-colored envelope attached to the door. Inside, a card with the same bold handwriting as Marco's. "Good morning, Miss Vance. I hope you slept well. Breakfast at the Summit restaurant is a must-try. My special treatment for distinguished guests includes a reserved table with the best view. Don't be late. D.T." Elara snorted. Special treatment. He was trying to provoke her, trying to make her feel like she was under his control. She crumpled the card, but a stubborn smile and a delicious irritation crept onto her lips. "He thinks he knows me. He thinks he can control me. We'll see." She wouldn't be late, and she wouldn't be controlled. At that moment, her phone vibrated again, a new message from Julian. "Please, Elara, give me a chance. I know I messed up." Elara felt a mixture of anger and exhaustion. He wouldn't give up. She locked the screen. The image of his name etched in her mind. How could she concentrate on her mission with so many men trying to destabilize her? An arrogant tycoon and a persistent ex-fiancé. It was a recipe for disaster, and she was right in the middle of it. At the Summit, the lodge's main restaurant, the atmosphere was vibrant. The smell of fresh coffee, crispy bacon, and pancakes with maple syrup filled the air. Guests in colourful ski attire laughed and chatted. Elara spotted the reserved table, strategically positioned next to a panoramic window, offering a breathtaking view of the mountains. And of course, Marco Thorne was already there, sipping coffee and reading a tablet, looking perfectly at ease, as if he were the king of his own snow castle. He looked up as she approached, a slow, confident smile spreading across his face. Marco, closing the tablet, punctually. "I'm glad to see that my suggestions are taken seriously." Elara pulled out a chair and sat down, ignoring the hand he offered to help her. Elara retorted, picking up the menu. "Don't confuse punctuality with obedience, Mr. Thorne. I simply appreciate a good breakfast and a good view," he says, his gaze sweeping over the mountains and then returning to her, a playful glint in his eyes. "Ah, yes, the view. It's one of my favorites, especially when shared with company. Interesting." He thinks, "She's even more beautiful this morning, with that cold determination in her eyes. And that controlled irritation. Fascinating. She thinks she can ignore me, but I see the spark." And her phone. "Julian. He's still trying. How pathetic. Her attention will be mine, and mine alone." Elara felt a shiver. He was flirting, shamelessly, and the mention of interesting company seemed like a direct provocation, a reminder that he knew she wasn't alone in her thoughts. Elara, without lifting her eyes from the menu, said, "Don't try too hard, Mr. Thorne. My assessment will not be influenced by your attempts at charm." He laughs, a deep, pleasant sound. "Attempts. I'd say they're quite effective, but I understand your reluctance to admit it. Impartiality is a virtue, after all." A cocktail waitress approached, smiling. "Waitress, good morning. May I bring you something to drink?" Elara orders. "A black coffee and a fresh orange juice, please." Marco, his gaze fixed on Elara. "And for me, a double espresso, and perhaps a little patience." The waitress smiled and walked away. Elara, curious despite herself. "Patience for what?" He replies, leaning slightly. "To unravel the mysteries of Silver Peak's most feared critic. You're an enigma, Elara Vance. And I love enigmas." Elara feels a warmth rising up her neck. "I'm not an enigma. I'm a professional," he says, his gaze lingering on her eyes, then on her lips. "And I am a man who appreciates beauty in all its forms. And you, Miss Vance, are a complex work of art." Elara felt a knot in her stomach. He had a way of disarming her with his comments, of making her feel exposed. Elara accuses, "You are a manipulator." He retorts, his smile fading slightly. "And you're a critic who refuses to see what's right in front of you. How about a temporary truce? Just for breakfast. We can discuss the merits of my lodge without the constant bickering." Elara hesitated. A truce. It was tempting. She needed information, and he was the source. And to be honest, the intensity of the back and forth was starting to become exhausting. Elara, narrowing her eyes, said, "Just for breakfast, and no flirting." He promised, but the glint in his eyes said otherwise. No flirting. Breakfast was a delicate dance between truce and teasing. Marco talked about the history of the lodge, the challenges of managing a ski empire, his passion for Silver Peak. Elara asked pointed questions, searching for flaws, but also found herself genuinely interested in his answers. He was more than just a pretty face and a fat wallet. He was intelligent, passionate, and, surprisingly, had a dry sense of humor that made her laugh despite herself. Suddenly, Elara's phone vibrated discreetly on the table. She glanced quickly at the screen, the name Julian flashing. She ignored it, but the tension in her shoulders was palpable. Marco, who was describing the origin of the coffee beans, stopped, his blue eyes fixed on her. Marco, with a wry smile, remarks, "It seems your truce doesn't extend to all your admirers, Miss Vance. Or perhaps it's just a reminder that the world out there still awaits you." Elara, her voice tense, replied, "It's just a distraction. And don't worry, Mr. Thorne. I'm perfectly capable of handling my own distractions." He laughs, a deep and pleasant sound. "I don't doubt it, but I must admit, curiosity is a flaw of mine. Who would be so persistent as to interrupt such an enlightening breakfast?" He thinks, Julian, him again. She's trying to ignore him, but the tension in her shoulders betrays her. He's a shadow from her past, and I don't like shadows, especially ones that compete for the attention I know she should be giving me. This isn't just about the lodge now. It's about her, and I don't lose. Ever. Elara felt a chill. He was fishing for information, and she didn't like being the bait. Marco, after a moment of silence, asked, "So, what did you think of my truffle omelette?" Elara responds with a nod, agreeing. But the egg could have been cooked more precisely, and the truffles, although fresh, didn't have as intense an aroma as the ones I tasted in a small bistro in Val d'Isère. Marco bursts into laughter. Val d'Isère? You really don't miss an opportunity to make comparisons, do you? Elara, with a shrug, said, "It's my job, and I take my job seriously." He says, his gaze deepening, "Me too, and I take my lodge's reputation seriously, and yours." Elara felt a shiver. He was always one step ahead. After breakfast, Marco invited her for a tour of the lodge. Marco, with a mischievous smile, "So that you can examine every corner. And perhaps, just perhaps, find something that impresses you." Elara reluctantly accepted. It was an opportunity to see the hotel from the inside, to ask questions she couldn't ask as a regular guest. The tour was exhaustive. Marco took her through every suite, every restaurant, every spa facility, every ski slope. He knew every detail, every employee, every story. He was an impeccable host, charming and informative. At one point, while Marco was explaining the history of an indigenous artwork, Elara's phone vibrated with a new message. She discreetly picked it up, typed a short reply, and quickly put it away, all under Marco's watchful gaze. He stopped talking, the expression on his face hardening slightly, his blue eyes narrowing. Marco, his voice a little colder. "Is everything all right, Miss Vance? It seems your assessments are being interrupted frequently." Elara, trying to remain calm, said, "It's just a personal matter. Nothing that will affect my assessment of your empire." He smiles, a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "Of course. Just make sure your personal matters don't distract you from the true soul of this place." "He thinks," she replied, "a short message." What did he say? What did she reply? Irritation bubbles in my chest. I want her focused. On me. On the lodge, not on a ghost from the past. This is a challenge, and I don't like to lose. I'm going to find out who Julian is, and I'm going to make sure he's not another distraction. Elara felt a shiver. He was getting angry, and she wasn't sure if that was good or bad. The tour continued, but the tension between them was palpable. Every accidental touch, every lingering glance, every exchange of sarcasm was charged with undeniable electricity. Elara found herself watching him, noticing the way his muscles moved beneath the fabric of his coat, the way he laughed with the staff, the passion in his eyes when he spoke about the lodge. He was a complex man, and she was beginning to be drawn to that complexity. At one point, as they walked down a hallway leading to the spa, Elara tripped on a loose rug. Marco caught her arm, his hand warm and firm against her skin. Marco, his face dangerously close to hers, said, "Careful, Miss Vance. I don't want you to get hurt in my lodge, especially not before you finish your assessment." Elara felt an electric shock run through her body where his hand held hers. The scent of pine and the proximity of his muscular body disoriented her, making her forget for a moment where they were. She looked at him, and the intense gleam in his blue eyes, an almost palpable desire that he tried unsuccessfully to disguise, took her breath away. For an instant, she saw not the arrogant tycoon, but a man who desired her with an intensity that made her forget the snow and the cold, and the very reason for her presence there. Elara pulled her arm away, but the image of his hand on her skin remained. "And I'm fine," he says, an enigmatic smile on his lips. "I'm sure of it. You seem quite resilient." She hated herself for feeling that spark. He was everything she detested in a man, arrogant, presumptuous, a born manipulator. But why on earth did her heart race when he smiled that dangerously? It was a mistake, an impending disaster for her career, and worse, for her already wounded heart. She couldn't afford to be distracted, much less fall for the object of her criticism. Her reputation, her integrity, everything was at stake. In the afternoon, Liam, Elara's brother, called. Liam, in a playful tone, asked, "Hey, Cece, how's the secret mission going?" Elara hissed, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "Liam, it's not a secret mission if you keep yelling about it, and Julian won't stop calling me." Liam, "Relax. I'm just checking. Have you met the arrogant tycoon yet? And is your ghostly ex-fiancé still haunting you?" Elara sighed. "Unfortunately, he knows I'm here, and he's being himself, and Julian is a pest." Liam, with a tone of admiration, said, "Ah, Marco Thorne. The guy's a genius, and charming. And Julian, what is he? A genius of persistence." Elara corrects, "He's a manipulator, and I'm trying to focus on my work, and Julian is a distraction I don't need." Liam, "I'm sure of it. But tell me, is he as handsome as they say? And is Julian as boring as you make him out to be?" Elara feels a warmth rising up her face. "Liam," he protests, "I'm just asking, for research purposes." Elara reluctantly said, "He is bearable. But don't worry, I'm not falling in love with my object of criticism, and Julian is a closed chapter." Liam, with a tone of disbelief, said, "Of course not. But let me know if he invites you skiing. I'd love to see that. And if Julian shows up there, give me a call and I'll take care of him." Elara hung up the phone, feeling even more frustrated. Liam wasn't helping at all. She needed to stay focused. Later, Elara was at the lobby bar, taking notes in her notebook, when Marco approached. He was wearing a dark cashmere sweater that accentuated his blue eyes. Marco asks, sitting down in the chair next to her, "Working hard, Miss Vance." Elara replies, without looking up, "Always." "Unlike some, I take my work seriously," he says with an enigmatic smile, "and I take the well-being of my guests seriously and their experience." Elara's phone vibrated again, a new message from Julian. She ignored it, but the vibration was a constant reminder. Marco noticed. His blue eyes narrowed imperceptibly. Marco, his voice a little lower, said, "It seems like your experience is being constantly interrupted. A secret admirer, perhaps. Or a ghost from the past that refuses to leave." Elara, her voice tense, said, "It's none of your business, Mr. Thorne." He leans in, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Anything that distracts you from my lodge is my business, Elara. And I don't like distractions, especially those that steal your attention from me." He thinks she's angry and a little scared. Julian, he's a threat to my conquest. She's mine, or she will be. And I won't let anyone, not even a persistent ex-fiancé, stand in my way. The charm war is on, and I will win. Elara felt a shiver. The possessiveness in his voice was undeniable, and, to her surprise, a part of her found it exciting. Marco, his gaze fixed on her lips. "How about a challenge, Miss Vance? A game of billiards? If I win, you tell me about your distractions. If you win, I'll leave you alone, for an hour." Elara smiles, a dangerous smile. You're confident, Mr. Thorne." He replies, "I always am, and you..." Elara stands up, picking up the pool cue. "I love a challenge, but don't expect me to be easy." The billiards match was a spectacle of provocations and intense stares. Elara, with surprising precision, showed that she was not only a sharp-witted critic, but also an astute player. Marco, in turn, displayed unwavering confidence. Each shot calculated, each movement a demonstration of power and control. With each ball pocketed, a defiant smile appeared on his lips, and Elara responded with a look that promised reciprocation. The tension between them was almost palpable, denser than the icy air of Silver Peak. Elara, with a victorious smile, pockets the last ball. "It seems your confidence, Mr. Thorne, was a little overdone. Marco, just a warm-up, Miss Vance," he said with a slow, dangerous smile. "And you, I must admit, are a worthy opponent, but don't think that changes the main game." Elara raises an eyebrow. "And what would the main game be?" He leans in, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Your assessment, and my ability to prove that this lodge has more soul than you ever imagined, and, of course, your undivided attention." He thinks, "She's good, very good. And that spark in her eyes when she challenges me, it's addictive. Julian, he's still there, an irritating shadow. But I'm going to erase that shadow. Her attention will be mine, every single bit of her. She hasn't realized it yet, but she's already caught in my web." Elara felt a shiver. He was always one step ahead, always turning every interaction into a personal challenge. Marco, with a twinkle in her eye, she asked, "How about a real challenge tomorrow? The ski slopes? I bet you can't keep up with me." Elara laughed, a clear, melodic sound that surprised even herself. "You're underestimating the wrong woman, Mr. Thorne. I grew up skiing." He smiled, a smile that gave her butterflies in her stomach. "Great. So tomorrow at 9. On the Black Diamond track, get ready to lose." Elara, with a defiant smile, said, "Don't count on it." She turned and walked away, feeling Marco's gaze on her back. The promise of a challenge in the snow was exciting, but also terrifying. She was playing with fire, and each interaction with him pulled her closer to the flame. Back in her suite, Elara threw herself onto the sofa, exhausted but with adrenaline coursing through her veins. The image of Marco's smile, the glint in his eyes, the way he challenged her, it was everything she hated and everything that attracted her. Her phone vibrated again. Julian. A series of messages. "Elara, please call me. I need to talk to you. I miss you. I know we can fix this." She read the messages, a knot forming in her stomach. Anger and frustration mingled with a pang of guilt. She didn't want to hurt him, but there was nothing left between them. He was a closed chapter, a mistake she couldn't afford to repeat. Elara, with a heavy sigh, dials Serafina's number. Elara, as soon as her friend answers, "Sarah, you won't believe it. I just had a ski race with Marco Thorne, and Julian won't stop calling me." Serafina laughed. "A ski race? Elara, are you crazy? And Julian, he really doesn't give up, does he?" Elara complains, "He's unbearable. And Marco, he's a challenge. He irritates me, but he also intrigues me." Serafina, in a playful tone, said, "Intrigue. My dear, that's the first step towards passion. And Julian is only making everything more dramatic." Elara, with a tone of disbelief, said, "Passion? I despise him. And Julian is a ghost from the past." Serafina says, "Contempt and passion are close neighbors, my dear. And ghosts from the past have a habit of reappearing when we least expect them." Elara hung up the phone, feeling Serafina's words echo in her mind. She couldn't fall in love with Marco Thorne. She couldn't. Her career, her integrity, everything depended on it. But the image of his dangerous smile and the glint in his blue eyes invaded her mind, and Julian's persistence was a constant reminder that her past still haunted her. The following morning, Elara prepared for the challenge. She donned her best ski outfit, a streamlined ensemble in shades of blue and silver that accentuated her athletic figure. She tied her hair in a high ponytail, determination etched on her face. She wouldn't lose, not to Marco Thorne. Upon arriving at the Black Diamond slope, Marco was already there, impeccably dressed in a black and grey ski suit that accentuated his broad shoulders and imposing posture. He was chatting with a group of ski instructors, but his eyes met hers the instant she appeared. A slow, confident smile spread across his lips. "Marco, punctual," I said with a nod. "I'm glad to see you take your challenges seriously, Miss Vance." Elara, with a defiant smile, said, "I take everything seriously, Mr. Thorne, especially when there's a bet involved." He laughs, a deep and pleasant sound. "And what would your bet be?" Elara, with a twinkle in her eye, said, "If I win, will you leave me alone to do my evaluation? No teasing, no flirting, no special treatment." Marco, he tilts his head, a thoughtful smile on his lips. "What if I win?" Elara hesitates. What would he ask for? Marco, his gaze fixed on her. "If I win, you'll grant me an interview. A real interview, where you can ask me anything you want, and I'll answer with complete honesty, and without sarcasm." Elara raised an eyebrow. It was a risky gamble. An interview with him could be disastrous for her impartiality, but her curiosity was strong. Elara's, with a nod, done. They positioned themselves at the starting line. The snow glistened in the sun. The air was crisp and sharp. The instructor gave the signal, "Instructor, ready, aim, go." They shot down the slope, snow flying beneath their skis. Elara was fast, agile, her movements fluid and precise. She felt the wind on her face, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She was in her element. Marco was right behind her, a blur of black and grey, his presence a constant force. He was an experienced, powerful skier, and with each turn he closed the gap between them. The race was intense, a ballet of speed and precision. Elara could feel his breath on her neck, his energy propelling her forward. She was focused, determined to win, but Marco was relentless. On the final turn, he overtook her by a fraction of a second, crossing the finish line just an instant before her. Marco panting, but with a victorious smile, "It seems I won, Miss Vance." Elara, also breathless, but with a reluctant smile, said, "That was close, very close." He extends his hand to her. "Quite a run. You're really impressive." Elara takes his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin through the glove. "You're not bad yourself, Mr. Thorne," he thinks. "She's incredible. The way she moves, the determination in her eyes. And her hand in mine, it's pure electricity. Julian, he doesn't stand a chance. She's mine. And this interview will be the beginning of something much bigger." Marco, with a twinkle in her eye, she said, "So, the interview. When are you free?" Elara felt a chill. She had lost. And now she would have to face Marco's honesty. Elara, with a sigh, "Tomorrow afternoon. In my room." He smiled, a smile that gave her butterflies in her stomach. "Perfect, I'll be there." She turned and walked away, feeling Marco's gaze on her back. She had lost the bet, but she felt she had gained something more, a new layer of respect for him, and an attraction that was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Back in her suite, Elara threw herself onto the sofa, exhausted but with a strange feeling of excitement. She had lost the race, but the experience had been invigorating, and the prospect of the interview with Marco was somehow intriguing. Her phone vibrated again. "Julian, Elara, please call me. I need to talk to you. I miss you. I know we can fix this." She read the messages, a knot forming in her stomach. Anger and frustration mingled with a pang of guilt. She didn't want to hurt him, but there was nothing left between them. He was a closed chapter, a mistake she couldn't afford to repeat. Elara, with a heavy sigh, dials Serafina's number. Elara, as soon as her friend answers, "Sarah, you won't believe it. I lost the ski race to Marco Thorne, and now I have to give him an interview. And Julian won't stop calling me." Serafina laughed. "Lost to the ski magnate? That's epic. And the interview? That's going to be interesting. And Julian? He hasn't given up yet, has he?" Elara complains. "He's unbearable. And Marco, he's a challenge. He irritates me, but he also intrigues me, and now he's going to interview me." Serafina, in a playful tone, said, "Intrigue. My dear, that's the first step towards passion, and Julian is only making everything more dramatic." Elara, with a tone of disbelief, said, "Passion, I despise him. And Julian is a ghost from the past." Serafina says, "Contempt and passion are close neighbors, my dear, and ghosts from the past have a habit of reappearing when we least expect them." Elara hung up the phone, feeling Serafina's words echo in her mind. She couldn't fall in love with Marco Thorne. She couldn't. Her career, her integrity, everything depended on it. But the image of his dangerous smile and the glint in his blue eyes invaded her mind. And Julian's persistence was a constant reminder that her past still haunted her. She felt like a skier on a steep slope, losing control. And the worst part was that she wasn't sure if she wanted to break. Elara wondered, what would Marco reveal in the interview? And how could she protect her heart from a man who challenged her on every level, while her romantic past kept knocking at her door? The afternoon arrived with a promise of snow, the Silver Peak sky tinged with a heavy grey that seemed to mirror the tension in the air. Elara was in her suite, arranging the final details for her interview with Marco. She had chosen a charcoal grey wool blazer over a white silk blouse, an image of professionalism and control, but inside, her heart beat erratically. It wasn't an ordinary interview. It was a game of cat and mouse, where the rules were dictated by a dangerous attraction. She felt like a skier about to descend an unknown slope, not knowing what she would find at the end. Her phone vibrated. Julian. A simple message. "I'm going to Silver Peak. I need to see you." Elara's blood ran cold. He was coming. Here, to Marco Thorne's lodge. Anger and panic mingled. This was the last thing she needed. A confrontation between the two men, in the midst of her redemption mission, would be a disaster of epic proportions. She locked the screen. Julian's name burning in her mind. Right on time, there was a soft knock on the door. Elara took a deep breath, trying to calm her heart. Elara opens the door. Mr. Thorne. Marco looked impeccable in a navy blue wool suit that accentuated his eyes. He held a bottle of red wine and 2 glasses. A slow, dangerous smile spread across his lips. Marco, raising the bottle, said, "I thought we could make this interview a little more enjoyable. A good Cabernet to warm up the conversation." Elara, raising an eyebrow, said, "I didn't know interviews required wine." He enters the suite, his eyes scanning the room with a disconcerting familiarity. Mine, yes, especially when the interviewee is so challenging. He thinks, she's nervous. I see it in her eyes. And her phone. I know Julian is behind this. He's an annoying distraction, but also an opportunity. An opportunity to show her who's really in control, and for her to see that I'm the only man she needs. She's mine, and I'm going to prove it to her. Elara felt a shiver. He was reading her like an open book. Elara, pointing to the coffee table, said, "Please, can we begin?" Marco placed the wine and glasses on the table, then sat on the sofa, his eyes fixed on her. He observed her with an intensity that made her feel completely exposed. Marco, with an enigmatic smile, said, "Of course, but first, a question. Why the nervousness, Elara? It's not typical of cold criticism." Elara feels her face flush. "I'm not nervous. I'm focused." He laughs, a deep, pleasant sound. "Focused. I understand. But there's something else. something that's bothering her. Elara looks away. There's nothing there. Marco leans in, his voice a hoarse whisper. I disagree. His eyes tell a different story, a story of worry. Elara felt a knot in her stomach. He was getting too close, invading her personal and emotional space. Elara, trying to change the subject, said, "The interview, Mr. Thorne." He smiles. "Ah, yes, the interview. My turn to be the subject of your relentless analysis." "Ask away." Elara picks up her notebook, trying to appear professional. "What is your vision for the Grand Summit Lodge over the next 5 years?" Marco responded passionately, speaking about sustainability, expansion, and unique guest experiences. He was a visionary, and Elara couldn't deny her admiration for his ambition and dedication. But with each answer, he looked at her with an intensity that went beyond professionalism. In the middle of Marco's reply, Elara's phone vibrated again. She ignored it, but the vibration was a constant reminder of Julian's presence. Marco stopped talking, his blue eyes narrowing. Marco, his voice a little colder, said, "It seems your distraction is quite persistent." Elara, her voice tense, said, "It's a personal matter." He gets up, walking to the window, his back to her. Personal matters have a habit of becoming public in a place like this, especially when they involve a famous journalist and a persistent ex-fiancé. Elara's heart raced. He knew about Julian. "Elara," her voice choked with emotion. "How do you know?" Marco turns, his eyes fixed on her, a mixture of anger and possessiveness. "I know everything that happens in my lodge, Elara, and I don't like seeing you bothered, especially by a man who doesn't deserve you." He thinks, she's shocked. Good. She needs to know that I'm in control, that I protect her. Julian is a threat to my conquest. I won't let him hurt her again. She's mine, and I'll fight for her. Elara felt a shiver. The possessiveness in his voice was undeniable, and, to her surprise, a part of her found it exciting. Elara angrily said, "You have no right to interfere in my personal life." Marco approaches her, his voice low and hoarse. "When your personal life affects your ability to be impartial, and when it puts you at risk, I have every right to be, and I don't like to see you suffer." He reaches out and touches her face, his thumb caressing her cheek. Elara feels an electric shock. His closeness, his gentle touch, the intensity of his gaze. It was all too much. Marco, his eyes fixed on hers. "He doesn't deserve her, Elara. He hurt her, and I won't let him do it again." Elara felt tears welling up in her eyes. His words were a balm to her wounded soul. He understood her. He saw her. "Elara," her voice a whisper, "you know nothing." He smiles, a tender smile full of hope. "I know enough, and I know you deserve more." He leans in, and this time, Elara doesn't pull away. Their lips meet in a soft kiss, hesitant at first, but which quickly deepens, becoming passionate and urgent. It was a kiss that carried the promise of everything they had denied, of everything they had feared. It was a kiss of surrender, of hope, of a love that had blossomed in the mountains. They part ways, breathless, their eyes shining. Elara whispers, her forehead pressed against his. "I don't know what that means for my review," Marco replies with a smile. "It means you're finally seeing the true soul of the place. And mine." He thinks, she kissed me. She wants me. Julian doesn't stand a chance anymore. She's mine, and I'm going to protect her. From everything, and from everyone. A loud knock on the door startles them. Elara and Marco separate abruptly, their eyes wide. "Elara," the voice a whisper. "Who is it?" A loud, angry male voice calls out from outside. "Elara, I know you're in there! Open the door!" Elara felt her blood run cold. Julian, he had arrived, and he was furious. Marco, his blue eyes hardening. Him! Elara, in a panic, asked, "What are we going to do?" Marco, with a dangerous smile, said, "I'll handle this. You stay here." He heads for the door, the expression on his face a mixture of anger and determination. Elara watches him, her heart pounding frantically. She knew she was about to witness an epic confrontation. Marco opens the door, revealing Julian, a tall, well-dressed man with a furious expression on his face. Julian, his eyes fixed on Marco. "Who are you? Where is Elara?" Marco, with an unsettling calm, said, "I am Marco Thorne, the owner of this lodge, and Elara is busy." Julian tries to push Marco inside. "I don't believe you." "I know she's here." Marco stops him with a firm arm. "I suggest you calm down and that you leave." Julian, angrily, "I'm not going anywhere. I came to get Elara. She's my fiancée." Elara, who was watching the scene, felt a knot in her stomach. A fiancée! He was lying. They had broken up months ago. Marco laughed. A cold, humorless sound. "Bride. I think you're mistaken. Elara doesn't have a fiancé." Julian tries to force his way in again. "Get out of my way. I'm going to talk to her." Marco pushes him back harder, his voice low and menacing. "I won't repeat myself. Get out of my lodge, now, or I'll be forced to call security." Julian hesitates, realizing the seriousness of the threat. He looks at Elara, who was standing in the room with an expression of shock and anger. Julian, his voice breaking, "Elara, please, give me a chance." Elara angrily said, "There's nothing left between us, Julian. You know that. Go away." Julian looks at her with an expression of pain and betrayal, then turns and leaves, furious, walking down the hallway. Marco closes the door, the expression on his face still tense. He turns to Elara, his blue eyes fixed on her. Marco, in a low voice, "Groom?" Elara sighed. "He was lying. We broke up months ago. He won't accept it." Marco approaches her, his voice hoarse. "He won't bother you anymore. I guarantee it." He embraces her, and Elara allows herself to sink into his arms, feeling safe and protected. The kiss, the confrontation with Julian, the adrenaline, it was all too much. Elara, her voice muffled, "Thank you." Marco, kissing the top of her head, said, "I won't let anyone hurt you, Elara. Never again." They remained embraced for a long time, the silence filled only by the sound of their hearts beating. The snow began to fall outside, covering Silver Peak with a silent white blanket. He thinks, "I kissed him, and he protected me." Marco Thorne, the arrogant tycoon, the man I should hate. But now, I wasn't sure what I felt. Fear, excitement, and a strange sense of belonging. Julian was the past. Marco, he was the present, and perhaps the future. He thinks, "She's mine." Finally, Julian is a distant memory. I kissed her, and she hugged me. She's strong, stubborn, but also vulnerable, and I will protect her from everything and from everyone. The charm war is over. The conquest has begun. They parted, their eyes locked on each other. The sexual tension was still there, but it was different now, softer, deeper, mixed with affection and respect. Marco, with a tender smile, asked, "How about we continue our interview tomorrow?" In a more secluded place, Elara, with a reluctant smile, asked, "Where?" Marco, a glint of adventure in his eyes, said, "I have an idea. A small hunting cabin hidden deep in the forest. No luxuries, no distractions, just us." Elara hesitated. It was madness. A night alone with Marco in an isolated cabin. Her mind screamed danger, but her heart, now more open, whispered adventure. "Elara," a smile spreading across her lips, "is it safe?" Marco, extending his hand to her, said, "With me, always." What do you say, critic? A night without luxuries, without evaluations, Just us. Elara looked at his outstretched hand, at the gleam in his eyes. It was a risk, but she felt she needed to take that step. Elara, taking his hand, said, "I tell you, you're crazy, but I accept the challenge." Elara wondered if she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life, or to embark on the greatest adventure of all. And, for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. The snowmobile ride through the snow-covered forest was an adventure in itself. Elara, clinging to Marco, felt the icy wind whip her face, but the warmth of his body against hers was a shield against the cold. Snow flew around them, and the sound of the engine was the only noise that broke the majestic silence of the mountain. She allowed herself to relax, trusting him in a way she had never trusted anyone before. The adrenaline of the ski race and the confrontation with Julian had opened a crack in her armor, and Marco was filling that crack with an overwhelming presence. He thinks, madness. This is pure madness. A high-profile journalist, a cold critic, on a snowmobile with an arrogant tycoon, heading to a secluded cabin in the middle of nowhere. But why on earth do I feel so alive, so free? Julian is a distant memory now. Here, with Marco, there is no past, only the present and the promise of something new and dangerous. It's a risk I'm willing to take. Marco, he maneuvered the snowmobile with skill, his movements fluid and confident. Elara felt every muscle in his back, the strength of his arms as he guided the vehicle through the trees. It was an intoxicating sensation, a mixture of fear and excitement. The scent of pine and fresh snow filled her lungs, a wild and pure fragrance that contrasted with the sophisticated perfume she usually wore. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the wind on her face, the speed, the freedom. It was as if the whole world had disappeared, and only the two of them existed in a bubble of adrenaline and discovery. Marco, his voice slightly muffled by the wind, "Are you enjoying the view, critic?" Elara, laughing, the sound of her laughter lost in the wind. "Yes, it's different, it's wild." He laughs, a deep, pleasant sound that resonated in his chest. Different is good, different is real. Here, there are no masks, Elara, only the truth. They arrived at the cabin after about 20 minutes. It was exactly as he had described, rustic, cozy, nestled in a secluded clearing, with a stone fireplace already prepared to be lit. The scent of wood and pine filled the air, an earthy and welcoming aroma that made her feel at home in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. The twilight filtered through the windows, painting the interior with golden and orange hues, creating a magical and intimate atmosphere. The cabin was small but perfectly functional, with a rustic bed covered in soft furs, a small kitchen, and a wooden table. Marco turned off the snowmobile. The silence that followed was almost deafening, broken only by the rustling of dry leaves under the snow and the distant howl of a wolf. He helped her down, his hands lingering a little longer than necessary on her waist, a touch that sent an electric shiver down her spine. Marco, his blue eyes fixed on her, a tender smile on his lips. "Welcome to my sanctuary, my refuge." Elara looked around, feeling a peace she rarely found. There was no luxury, no pretension, just the simple, raw beauty of nature. The dark wood of the walls, the bearskin rug in front of the fireplace, the candles he lit, everything contributed to a feeling of warmth and intimacy. Elara whispers, her voice choked with emotion. "It's beautiful. It's real. It's as if this place has a soul of its own." He thinks, she's surprised, good. I wanted her to see this side of me, the side that isn't about empires and business, the side that's about the soul. She's so beautiful when she's vulnerable, when her defenses fall. Her eyes, once so skeptical, now shine with genuine admiration. Julian has no place here. Here, it's just us. I want her, I desire her, and I will have her soul, just as she is touching mine. Marco, he lit the fireplace, the flames dancing and casting warm shadows on the wooden walls. The crackling of the firewood was the only sound, filling the silence with a comforting melody. He took a bottle of red wine and 2 glasses from a small pantry, and a basket of artisan breads, fine cheeses, and dried fruits. Marco, offering her a glass of wine, the fruity and woody aroma filling the air, said, "No room service here, Elara, just the essentials. And what's essential is sometimes all we need." Elara took the glass, her fingers brushing against his, sending an electric spark between them. A genuine smile spread across her lips, a smile he rarely saw. "Elara, essential is good. Sometimes luxury hides what's truly important, the true essence of a place." He smiles, his eyes shining with an intensity that makes her feel butterflies in her stomach. An interesting critique. "And you believe that the Grand Summit Lodge lacks soul?" Elara, gazing at the dancing flames, her voice soft, said, "I was wrong. I was so focused on finding fault, on proving a point, on protecting my reputation, that I didn't allow the soul of the place to touch me. I was blinded by my own skepticism. Until now." Marco sat beside her on a bearskin rug in front of the fireplace, the proximity intoxicating. The warmth of the fire and the heat of his body enveloped her, creating a feeling of security and intimacy. Marco, his voice low and hoarse, a whisper that sent shivers down her spine. "And what made you change your mind? What made you see the soul?" Elara hesitated, her eyes meeting his. The vulnerability in her gaze was palpable, a silent confession. "Elara," her voice a whisper almost inaudible, You showed me. You challenged me to see beyond the surface, to feel beyond reason. You made me feel." He reaches out and touches her face, his thumb gently caressing her cheek, bringing tears to her eyes. "Marco, your voice hoarse, full of emotion, and you challenged me to be more than just a tycoon. You made me want to be real. You made me want to be a man who deserves your truth." They leaned in, and their lips met in a soft, tender kiss, full of a silent promise. It wasn't the urgent kiss of the sweet, but a kiss that spoke of connection, of understanding, of one soul recognizing another. It was a kiss that healed, that promised a new beginning. The taste of wine and the scent of pine mingled, creating an unforgettable sensory experience. As the flames in the fireplace danced, casting a warm glow on their faces, Elara and Marco snuggled closer. The silence was comfortable, filled only by the crackling of the wood and the soft sound of their breaths. Elara felt Marco's hand caress her hair, a tender gesture that made her relax even more in his arms. She had never felt so safe, so seen. The rigidity that had accompanied her for years began to dissolve, like snow under the sun. But the vulnerability that came with this intimacy was frightening, a door she had kept locked for so long. "Elara," her voice a whisper, almost inaudible, I've never allowed myself to feel this before. This surrender. Yes, it's terrifying." Marco, kissing the top of her head, his lips brushing her skin, said, "It's scary, I know, but it's also the most real thing there is, the bravest thing you can do." He pulled her closer, and Elara felt the warmth of his body, the strength of his arms. She could feel the emotional scars he carried, the marks of battles fought and victories won, just as he could feel hers, the wounds of a past that had made her cynical. They were not just 2 bodies, but 2 souls, recognizing each other, healing each other, finding solace in each other's presence. The fireplace crackled, and the outside world, with its criticisms, its ex-fiancés, and its expectations, seemed infinitely distant. There, in that moment, only the 2 of them existed, and the silent promise of something new and profound, something that defied all logic and reason. The peace in the cabin was almost perfect, but Elara's mind couldn't completely switch off. The image of Julian, furious at the door of his suite, still haunted her, a persistent shadow on her newfound happiness. She felt a shiver, and Marco, noticing her change in mood, held her tighter in his arms, as if he could ward off the darkness with his own warmth. Marco, his voice low, a murmur in his ear. "What are you thinking? Your thoughts are far away." Elara, with a heavy sigh, her voice thick with worry, said, "Julian, he won't give up. He's persistent, and I don't want him to cause problems for you. Or for us." Marco pulled her away slightly, his blue eyes fixed on hers, a mixture of anger and determination in his gaze. He could feel her worry, the shadow of the past that still haunted her. Marco, his voice firm, with an implicit promise. "He won't. I guarantee it. Julian is a closed chapter, Elara, a mistake of the past. He no longer has a place in your life, and even less in ours." Elara looked at him, feeling a wave of relief and a pang of fear. He was willing to face Julian for her, Elara, the soft voice, but he can be dangerous. He doesn't take no for an answer. Marco smiles, a smile that doesn't reach his eyes, but conveys unwavering confidence. "I'm more dangerous than him, Elara, and I won't let anyone hurt you or come between us. He doesn't stand a chance. He doesn't have you. I do, and I'll make sure of it. I'll protect you." The possessiveness in his voice was undeniable, and Elara felt a mixture of fear and a strange sense of security. He was willing to fight for her, to protect her. It was a promise she didn't know if she could accept, but deep down, her heart desperately desired it. Julian's shadow still lingered, but Marco's determination was a shield she had never had before, a fortress that made her feel invincible. They continued to talk, to share, to get to know each other on a deeper level. Marco spoke about his passion for Silver Peak, about the challenges of building an empire from scratch, about the loneliness that came with success and responsibility. Elara listened, fascinated, seeing a side of him that few had seen, a complex, vulnerable, and incredibly passionate man. She, in turn, shared her own struggles, her insecurities, the weight of the reputation she carried, and the pain of a past that had made her cynical. Later, as the flames in the fireplace died down, they sat side by side on a bearskin rug, the silence filled only by the crackling of the wood. Elara felt Marco's gaze on her, a gaze that saw her completely, without judgment. Marco, his voice low and husky, a whisper that sent shivers down her spine. "Elara, I know you're afraid of getting hurt, afraid of losing control, afraid of surrendering, but I need you to know that what I feel for you is more than just attraction. It's something that scares me and excites me at the same time. Yes, it's love. I'm falling in love with you." Elara felt her heart race, a frantic drumming in her chest. His words were a balm to her wounded soul, a melody she never thought she would hear. She looked at him, her eyes brimming with tears, emotion overflowing. Elara confesses, her voice choked with emotion, almost a lament. "Me too, Marco. I'm falling in love with you too. And it terrifies me. It terrifies me because I don't know how to deal with it." Marco smiles, a tender and hopeful smile that lights up his face. He reaches out and touches her face, his thumb caressing her cheek. Wiping away a lone tear, Marco whispers, his voice full of promise, "Don't be afraid, Elara. I'm here, I'm with you, and together we can face anything." He leans in, and this time, Elara doesn't pull away. Their lips meet in a soft kiss, hesitant at first, but which quickly deepens, becoming passionate and urgent. It was a kiss that carried the promise of everything they had denied, of everything they had feared. It was a kiss of surrender, of hope, of a love that had blossomed in the mountains, a love that defied all expectations and prejudices. They part ways, breathless, their eyes gleaming with a new, intense light. Elara whispers, her forehead pressed against his. "I don't know what this means for my criticism, for my career." Marco replies, with a tender smile, "It means you're finally seeing the true soul of the place. And mine. And your own. It means you're living your truth." He thinks, "I love him, I really love him. But what now? How can I write an unbiased review? How can I protect my integrity? And Julian, he's still out there. He won't give up so easily. My life is upside down. But strangely, I don't want it to go back to normal." He thinks, "She loves me. I love her. This is real. Julian is a threat, but I'll deal with him. She's mine, and I'll fight for her. For us. The future is uncertain, but with her by my side, I can face anything. I found her, my soulmate, my critic, my Elara." They spent the rest of the night together, not with the overwhelming passion one might expect, but with a tender and profound intimacy, talking, embracing, and losing themselves in the connection they had found. Elara fell asleep in Marco's arms, feeling safe and loved in a way she hadn't felt in a long time, a peaceful and restorative sleep. Dawn began to peek through the cracks in the cabin, painting the sky with soft shades of pink and orange, announcing a new day. Elara, still in Marco's arms, felt reality begin to seep into her bubble of happiness. The mission, the criticism, her reputation, everything she had fought to build, everything that defined her as the cold and relentless critic. The weight of the world seemed to return. But now she wasn't alone to carry it. Elara, her voice a whisper, laden with a profound dilemma. "I don't know how I'm going to write this review now. My heart is compromised. My mind is divided." Marco, kissing her hair, his lips brushing her forehead, said, "Don't write a critique. Elara, write the truth. Your truth. The truth you found here, in this place, and in us." Elara turned to him, her blue-grey eyes filled with uncertainty and a hint of fear. "But what if my truth isn't what they expect? What if it harms my career, or yours? What if Julian uses this against me?" Marco smiled, a tender and confident smile that calmed her. He hugged her tighter, conveying reassurance. "Your integrity is what matters, Elara, and mine. The Grand Summit Lodge has a soul, and you found it. The rest is just noise. And Julian, he has no power over your truth." He kissed her gently, a kiss that promised unconditional support and understanding. Elara knew the road ahead would be challenging, full of difficult choices and unpredictable consequences. But with Marco by her side, she felt she could face anything. The cabin, once a refuge, was now a starting point for an uncertain future, but one full of possibilities. A future she was, for the first time, eager to discover. The next morning, Elara woke to the smell of coffee and burning wood. Marco was standing, preparing breakfast in a small, rustic kitchen. He turned and smiled at her, a warm and genuine smile that made her feel completely at ease, as if this was the place where she had always belonged. Marco, with a playful glint in his eyes, said, "Good morning, reviewer. I hope your assessment of our secret cabin is positive." Elara laughed, feeling light and happy, a happiness that radiated from within. Elara replies, standing up and going to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "It's the best experience I've had so far, but that doesn't mean your critique will be easy." Marco kisses her gently, a kiss that sealed a promise. "Marco, I expect nothing less. But now you have a different perspective, don't you?" Elara nodded, feeling the warmth of his body. She had a different perspective, yes. She had found love where she least expected it, and that changed everything. But the reality of her mission still hung over them. How could she write an unbiased review now that her heart was involved? And how could she protect Marco and his dream without compromising her own integrity? And Julian, he was still out there, a latent threat, a reminder that the outside world still existed. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. She had Marco, and together they would face whatever came their way. Elara wondered, how would she reconcile her love for Marco with her professional ethics? And how would they deal with the persistent shadow of Julian, who seemed determined not to leave her in peace? The future was a mystery, but one thing was certain: their story was only beginning, and she was ready to write it. The following morning at the secret cabin dawned with a timid sun peeking through the clouds, painting the snow with shades of pink and gold. Elara woke in Marco's arms, feeling a peace and happiness she hadn't experienced in a long time. The smell of fresh coffee and burning wood enveloped her, and for a moment she wished that moment could last forever. But the reality of her mission, her critique, and the dilemma she faced hung like a cloud over her newfound happiness. Julian's shadow, though distant, was still a pang of worry in her heart. He thinks it's real. All of this is real. I love him, and he loves me. But what now? How do I reconcile the cold criticism with the woman who found her soul in this place? How do I protect my integrity and, at the same time, the love that has blossomed? And Julian, he won't simply disappear. I need a solution that honors me, Marco, and the truth. She turned to him, her blue-grey eyes meeting his. Elara whispers, a smile on her lips. "Good morning," Marco replies, kissing her forehead tenderly. "Good morning, my critic. Did you sleep well?" Elara confesses, "Better than in a long time, but now we need to talk." Marco nodded, his expression turning serious. He knew what was coming. He knew the bubble of happiness in the cabin wouldn't last forever. Marco, standing up and grabbing 2 mugs of coffee, said, "I know about your review and about Julian." They sat at the rustic table, the hot coffee in their hands, the steam rising in spirals in the cold cabin air. Elara said, her voice heavy with frustration and a hint of despair, "I can no longer write an unbiased review, Marco. My heart is involved. I can't be the cold critic I used to be. It would be a sham." Marco listened attentively, his hand reaching out to cover hers, a gesture of support and understanding. "Marco, your voice soft and firm. I don't want you to be Elara. I want you to be you, the woman who found the soul of this place, and I trust you. I trust your integrity." Elara, her concern evident in her voice, said, "But what if I write something that isn't 100% objective? What if it damages his reputation, or mine? What if Julian uses it against us? He's capable of anything." Marco squeezes her hand, his eyes fixed on hers, conveying an unwavering strength. "Your reputation, Elara, is built on truth. And the truth is, this place has a soul. And you've found it. As for Julian, he's a problem I'll solve. He won't bother us anymore." Elara looked at him, feeling torn. She loved Marco, loved what he had built, but her work ethic was an intrinsic part of who she was. The idea of compromising her integrity terrified her. Elara, her voice firm, said, "I can't simply ignore the facts. I have to be honest, with myself and with my readers." Marco replied, a glint in his eyes, a thoughtful smile on his lips. "And I expect nothing less. But what if there were a way for you to be honest, for you to tell the story of the Grand Summit Lodge from your perspective, without compromising its integrity? A way for you to transcend criticism and create something greater?" Elara raised an eyebrow, skeptical but intrigued. And what could this magical form be? A new column, a documentary? Marco smiled, a smile that gave her butterflies in her stomach, a smile full of promise and audacity. "I want you to write a book about Silver Peak, about the Grand Summit Lodge, about the story behind its construction, about the people who make it special, about the soul you found here, about your journey." Elara was speechless. A book? The idea was audacious, unexpected, and incredibly tempting. It was a way to combine her passions, to tell a story that was much more than a simple assessment. Elara, still skeptical but with a glint of excitement in her eyes, said, "A book isn't a critique, it's a narrative." Marco agreed, his voice full of conviction. "No, it's something much deeper. It's your voice, your truth, your passion, and I want you to write it. I'll finance it. I'll make sure it's published by the best publisher, and you'll have total creative freedom. No censorship, no pressure, just your story." Elara felt her heart race. It was a tempting offer, a way to reconcile her love for Marco with her passion for writing, to tell a story that was more than just an evaluation. It was a chance for redemption, not only professionally but personally. Elara, a hint of her old sarcasm returning, asked, "And what would you gain from that, Mr. Thorne, besides having a famous writer by your side?" Marco, his eyes fixed on her, the intensity of his gaze enveloping her. "My reward, Elara, would be to see you happy, doing what you love, and perhaps, just perhaps, to have your story told in a way that no one else could. A story that would reveal the true soul of this place through your eyes. And of course, to have you by my side." Elara felt tears welling up in her eyes. He wasn't just offering a solution. He was offering a future where she could be herself, without compromising her integrity, and alongside the man she loved. He thinks, "A book. My story, my truth, it's perfect. It's the solution I didn't know I needed. And it's giving me that. It's giving me the freedom to be myself. I love it. I love it so much." He thinks, she accepted. "I knew she would. She's a writer, a storyteller, and now she's going to tell our story. The story of the Grand Summit Lodge. Our story. Julian doesn't stand a chance. She's mine, and this is just the beginning." They spent the rest of the morning talking about the book, about their ideas, about the future. Elara's passion for writing was rekindled, and Marco's vision for the lodge expanded to include the story she would tell. It was an audacious plan, but perfect. Upon returning to the Grand Summit Lodge, the atmosphere felt different to Elara. It was no longer just an object of criticism, but a place with a history, with a soul she now knew intimately. They disembarked from the snowmobile, and Liam, who was in the lobby, spotted them immediately. He approached, a mischievous smile on his face, but with a glint of curiosity in his eyes. Liam, his eyes sweeping over Elara and Marco, who were holding hands, thought, "Well, well, well. Looks like the cold critic has finally met his match, and the arrogant tycoon has finally found someone who puts up with him and who gets him out of the cabin." Elara felt her face burn, but Marco just laughed. A deep, amused sound. Marco, in a playful tone, "Liam, Elara, and I have some news." Liam, raising an eyebrow, "Any news? Don't tell me you two are getting married." Elara and Marco exchanged a glance, a knowing smile on their lips. Elara, teasingly, replied, "Not yet, but we are working on a project together." Liam, skeptical, "A project? What kind of project? A project to melt the hearts of critics?" Marco interjected, a glint in his eye. "A book." Liam, "Elara is going to write a book about Silver Peak and the Grand Summit Lodge, the story behind her soul." Liam's mouth dropped open, his eyes wide with surprise. "A book? My sister? The Queen of Sarcasm is going to write a book about a resort. This is epic." He hugged Elara tightly, then patted Marco on the back. "I knew you had potential, Thorne, but not this much. You achieved the impossible." Elara laughed, feeling happy to have Liam in her life, even with his teasing. His acceptance meant a lot. Suddenly, a familiar, angry voice rang out from the other side of the lobby. Julian. He was there, standing in the doorway, his eyes fixed on Elara and Marco, who were still holding hands. Anger and betrayal were evident on his face. Julian, his voice loud and full of fury, "Elara! What does this mean? Are you with him?" After everything we've been through, Elara felt a chill. The confrontation she feared had arrived. Marco, his expression hardening, his voice low and menacing. "Julian, I thought we had been clear." Julian ignores Marco, his eyes fixed on Elara. "You traded me for him, for the man you despised." Elara, her voice firm. "Julian, there hasn't been an us for a long time, and you don't have the right to come here and make a scene." Julian approaches, his eyes filled with pain and anger. "I love you, Elara. I know I was wrong, but I can change." Marco steps in front of Elara, protecting her. She's already made it clear. "Julian, go away. Now." Julian tries to push Marco away, but he is unwavering. "I'm not going anywhere until she listens to me." He thinks he won't give up. He's a pest. But he won't ruin this. Not now. Elara is mine, and I will protect her. From everything, and from everyone. Marco, his low, dangerous voice. Security. 2 security guards approach quickly. Julian, realizing he is at a disadvantage, hesitates. He looks at Elara one last time, his eyes filled with deep pain, before being escorted out of the lodge. Elara felt a sigh of relief. Finally, he was gone. Liam, with a whistle. "Wow, that was dramatic, but you handled it like a boss, Elara, and you, Thorne, a true gentleman." Marco smiles, a smile that doesn't reach his eyes, just protecting what is mine. Elara felt a shiver. "What's mine?" The possessiveness in her voice was undeniable, but, strangely, she didn't care. In the following days, Elara began working on the book, immersing herself in the history of Silver Peak, interviewing employees, guests, and, of course, Marco. She discovered even more about his passion, the challenges he faced, and the community he had built. With each word she wrote, she felt more connected to him, to the place, and to herself. Julian was a distant memory, a shadow that had finally been dispelled by the light of love and truth. Several months had passed. Elara's book was nearly finished, and her relationship with Marco had deepened into a solid and unwavering love. They were dining at one of the lodge's most elegant restaurants, celebrating the book's impending success and the 1-year anniversary of Elara's arrival at Silver Peak. Life had transformed from a cold mission into a passionate adventure. Marco was more nervous than usual, and Elara noticed. He led her to a private terrace under a starry sky and the soft light of the full moon illuminating the snow-capped mountains. The air was crisp and cool, and the mountain silence was broken only by the distant sound of the wind. "See." His voice trembled slightly, but was full of conviction, as he knelt before her, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "Elara, I know you're an independent woman, a fierce critic, and that you value your freedom above all else. But I can't imagine my life without you. You showed me the soul of this place, and my own. You made me a better man. You made me believe in love again." He opened the box, revealing a dazzling diamond ring that sparkled in the moonlight, capturing the essence of the stars. Marco, his eyes fixed on hers, full of love and hope. "Elara Vance, would you do me the honor of being my wife? Would you give me the chance to build a future together, a future where love and honor are the pillars of our story?" Elara felt tears streaming down her face. It was everything she had ever wanted, but never knew how to ask for. It was the promise of a future she had never dared to dream of. Elara whispers, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, Marco, 1,000 times yes." He stood up and kissed her, a passionate kiss full of promises under the starry sky of Silver Peak. It was a kiss that sealed their fate, a kiss that spoke of a love that had overcome skepticism, sarcasm, and the shadows of the past. He thinks, I said yes to the man who challenged me, who annoyed me, who made me see the soul of the world and my own. I said yes to my future. Julian is a distant memory. Marco is mine forever. He thinks, she said yes, she is mine. My Elara, my wife, I love her, and I will make her happy forever. This is the beginning of our story, a story of love and honor in the mountains. The wedding was an intimate and luxurious celebration, held at the Grand Summit Lodge, attended by close friends and family, including an emotional and surprisingly restrained, though somewhat tamed, tycoon, Liam. Elara and Marco were married under an arch of white flowers and pine trees, with the mountains as witnesses, a majestic setting for an epic love story. Years passed, and Elara and Marco built a life together that surpassed all expectations. Elara's book, The Soul of Silver Peak, became a bestseller, praised for its honesty and beauty, and solidified her reputation as a renowned writer, capable of seeing the depth and truth in every story. She continued to write, exploring new destinations, but always returning to Silver Peak, her home and her inspiration, a place that now carried a much deeper meaning. Marco, with Elara by his side, expanded the Grand Summit Lodge, but always with a focus on sustainability and preserving the natural beauty of the mountain. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, who grew up running along the ski slopes and learning to love the mountain as much as their parents. They were the embodiment of Elara and Marco's love and adventure. Elara and Marco continued to challenge each other, teasing one another with sarcasm and humor, but always with a deep and unwavering love. They proved that love can blossom in the most unexpected places, between the most unlikely people, and that true honor lies in following one's heart, even when the path is uncertain. Their story became a legend in Silver Peak, a testament to the power of love and redemption. The Grand Summit Lodge was not just a luxury resort, it was a legacy of love, of dreams fulfilled, and of a story that began with a skeptical critic and an arrogant tycoon, and ended with a happily ever after that was as epic and incredible as the mountains that united them. The soul of Silver Peak had been found, and with it, the souls of Elara and Marco intertwined forever. Tell me here in the comments where you are listening to me from. Subscribe to the channel. Activate the bell for new stories.